Hello and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Kasey Jones.
And I'm Ashleigh Early.
And this is a pretty big episode for us. And I have to admit, I didn't realize that this was such a big deal. It was Ashleigh who figured it out, but this is officially the very first episode of our second year of doing this.
Woo! We made it a year.
Cue the celebration noise, the party. And holy moly, it has been quite a year. It feels both like we've done this for 5 years and like we've done it for 2 months.
Yeah.
And so we thought what we would talk about today is, okay, what are all the things that we have learned over this last year? Because holy moly, it has been quite a journey. So I think to kick things off, we'll start with kind of the overarching learning, which this shit is hard.
Yeah. Wait, and I'll say this, and it's funny because we're now at the point where I've got other podcasters coming to me for advice, coming to us for advice, and it's like, here are the 3 things we've figured out, and here are the 10 things we're still working on, and if you have answers to any of these, we'll take them.
And I will give us credit. So I have now helped several other people kind of figure out their process of starting their podcast. There are certain things that we figured out to do really quickly that I'm proud of us for. So, for example, we have an intake form for any guest. So we ask them questions and it makes it much easier, one, for us to learn about them, for us to confirm that they're doing it. We've kind of automated the process of them scheduling the interview and all of these other things, which it's shocking to me how many times a podcast will reach out to me to be a guest. And it's then like 7 emails back and forth of information to give them and time to schedule. And it's a miserable experience. And so I'm proud of us for that.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that we've learned, and don't get me wrong, there's lots and lots of things that we really screwed up when we started. But I think the biggest thing.
There are episodes that you will never hear. There are legitimately, I think we've got about 3 hours of content that will never hear the light of day because we were figuring out the microphones. The first episode we actually recorded it, I'll never forget, because it was actually Henry's birthday, the first time we tried to record an episode.
Henry being Ashleigh's dog, let's be very clear here.
Henry, Ashleigh's older dog. It was his second birthday. First birthday? Second birthday. Yes, I have to think about that because he's now 3. And I just remember that day, and in the middle of the show, there was a giant, huge, classic southern storm. So like you could actually hear the rain and the thunder and stuff on the recording. It's delightful and terrible. It's actually terrible. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's been learned, and a lot of it's the hard way. So this is also a message to any of the other, because I know there's a bunch of people who have started podcasts in 2020. Stick with it. It doesn't get easier, but you do learn. You really, really do learn.
Yeah, and it really does come down to like being consistent about it and getting into a rhythm. But I think the other thing too, yes, just the doing is hard, but what we've really opened our eyes up to in the last couple of months is how hard it was and has been and continues to be to match the mission behind this podcast to the reality. And when we got into this, our whole vision was to really tell stories of diverse sales professionals and for our demographics to get as close to the demographics of the United States as we possibly could. And we failed.
Yep. We did not hit our target. And this is where it gets kind of interesting, because it's really easy to go, and this is something we've noticed a lot more too as we become more mindful of this, is we started mindful that this was going to be hard and confident that we could do it, and we still missed. We did not have enough LGBTQ representation. We did not have enough Black representation until we made the switch in June to be focusing exclusively on Black sales pros pretty much all summer. And there are certain groups that are not represented at all. Very few Asian Americans, very few, no Native Americans, major groups that we didn't do enough work to go and find and make sure they knew this was a safe place. That said, we came into this knowing that was going to be a struggle, and we struggled, which gives a kind of a deep kind of level of empathy for people who it is not what their goal was. It was not something they were seeking to do up front. Doesn't mean they should do it, they should, but it's kind of this thing of like, God, if we're struggling with this, how hard must this be for someone who is just now realizing, oh yeah, I'm supposed to, I really should, I guess I have had a lot of white guys on the show recently. I should probably fix that. That's hard. That's a really hard thing. But to borrow from John Lewis, that is some good trouble that I want to get into, not just for our own podcast, but so we can be sharing how to do it with other ones and other programs.
Because here's the deal. Like, yes, it's hard, and I have empathy for that. Mm-hmm. But what we've seen a lot is people that have good intentions that just don't do the work.
Yep.
And we've seen a number of people who I had way higher expectations of, but who, release a bunch of different episodes of a podcast with almost no women. And
or no representation for the Black community at all.
Yeah. And I've seen this over and over again. And just talking a good game, just having good intentions is not enough.
No.
And way too often I'm seeing people who I know have a good heart, who I know believe in these things,
who have been advocates. Full credit. They have spoken out before.
But they're not doing they're not doing the work. They're not walking the walk. And I think this is something that it's concerning for us in our industry, where there are thought leaders in our industry that talk a lot about representation and equity and all these other things, but then sit on a panel of all white people talking about diversity.
Yep.
And it is really deeply concerning. And it's one of those things where I think it's really, really important for anybody that does have a platform to be honest about the fact that it's hard, the fact that it takes work, and holding one another to a higher standard of owning when you screw it up. And I'm not trying to give us a ton of kudos that we don't deserve, but I am saying I am really, really proud of Ashleigh and me for when we realized how much we'd come up short. We had several really hard conversations, just the two of us, and then also trying to speak as publicly as we could about owning up that we really fucked it up. And the only way we as an industry are going to get better is being willing to admit when we come up short.
And I think I want to tag in here too, because it's not just about, there's this mentality in sales in a lot of places, and a lot of places of our world today, of good enough.
Yeah.
Industry standard.
Yep.
This is not about reaching industry standard. This is not about good enough. This is about setting the standard where it should have been in the first place.
Yep.
And holding ourselves accountable to that.
Yeah.
Having your diversity of your guests on your panels at your company to reflect the demographics of where you live as closely as possible should be table stakes, because that's how you get diversity of thought that results in higher profits. There are studies out the wazoo on why that matters and how it's better for everyone as a community, as a society, as a company.
And I think you bring up a really good point, because look, at most companies, 30% of leadership being women and like 2% being people of color, that's the standard. That should not be the standard when we're talking about panel discussions, podcast interviews, event speakers, all of that. We're not going to improve those numbers if we're not putting in the work to make them better.
Yep.
And so the like, oh, well, 30% is pretty typical. That's not okay.
No. We need to hold, there's the old adage, leaders lead from the front. Leaders have to lead by example. I'm not saying we're leaders in this space, but this is something that is core to our mission and has been from the start, from our origin story. Started as the two of us feeling like we weren't represented.
Yep.
And wanting to reach a hand back and pull everyone else we can up with us. So this is very much about us leading from the front.
Yeah.
I don't hear anyone really having these discussions right now. I don't hear anyone else saying, you know, I want to celebrate progress. I will celebrate with every company that says we were here. We've gotten up to here. We're going to keep going. I will celebrate with that company.
Yeah.
What I've refused, what I have learned, especially in the past few months, is I am done celebrating status quo. I am done celebrating when someone just comes up to industry standard. And that's a failing grade.
It is. And look, the other thing, and I've had this conversation multiple times, oftentimes when a company or like an organization recognizes that their numbers aren't where they want them to be, what they do, thinking that like they'll get more women to come to their event or people of color to apply to their jobs, they're like, oh, we're going to just highlight those people on our website. And guess what? And I've had this conversation with an event organizer before, where I knew it was an event where they hardly ever got women to go. And 2/3 of the testimonials on the website were from women. And I said to them, we'd had a pretty transparent conversation. They were asking how they could get more women to go. And I said, don't do that, because it makes me feel like you're condescending to me and you're just straight up lying to me. And I would rather have someone say on the website, hey, we've really struggled to get women to attend to this event, or people of color to apply for these jobs. Here's what we're doing to change it. We hope you'll be a part of helping us improve these numbers. And if having that transparent conversation is so much more meaningful, it is so much more validating. And I would way rather be a part of that company, that experience, than having someone pretend that it's something that it isn't.
Yep. No, you're spot on. And so to that end, here's what we're doing to fix it.
Yeah.
So we've already made our shift in July to featuring a lot more Black sales pros. We will continue that initiative into our second year. It's not going to be our sole focus, but we are going to be much more intentional about how we're doing that. And to help with this, actually excited about this, we decided we're going to set up an accountability board. And this is basically going to be a group of individuals. And we would love any of you who are listening who are interested in participating to please reach out to us. We'll put all the details on othersideofsales.com. But this accountability board is going to be several people representing various demographics that we know make for amazing sales pros. I don't think there's a demographic that wouldn't make an amazing sales pro, but looking for Black men and women, Asian men and women, members of the LGBTQ community, non-gender conforming,
Latinx,
Latinx,
Native American,
everything you can think of, and making sure that each group has multiple genders represented.
Yeah.
And it will be their job for us to report to them how we're doing, and for them to advise and hold us accountable to our goals. So,
and also to tell us when we're screwing up.
Yes.
If we're saying a thing that is not resonating or that is coming across offensive, or like, we want to be schooled. And I think, look, it's terrifying. It's way easier to just like kind of fly under the radar and not have hard conversations. It's really freaking hard to have someone be like, hey, that thing you said actually sounded pretty fucked up. But you know what? We've had a few of those conversations, and more than a few, and we get better.
Yep.
And you know what? 9 times out of 10, when we have those conversations, we wind up creating much more closer relationships and friendships with the people that call us out. So, you know, please at least be sort of nice when you call us out.
Yeah.
Know that we are doing our best and we really, really are trying, but like, do call us out. Do point out what we could be doing better, how we could be better at this. That's the name of the game. Like, it's about progress. It's not about perfection, because that really doesn't exist when it comes to this shit.
Yep. So the accountability board is going to be launched probably officially. We'll do our screening process over the next month or so. Screening process is going to be us having conversations with people saying, would you be willing to do this? And here's what we're asking of you. And then we'll probably be announcing who's going to be on the accountability board around the same time we're announcing the state of sales results, which is going to be sometime in September. And that kind of brings us to the second half, which is the survey and all the work around that. That was quite an odyssey, which we're still dealing with, which is fantastic. Like it's been from launching it literally like a week before, like I think we launched it like 3 weeks before the country shut down, to just, you know, really doing a very concerted, basically influencer style, please to ask your people to fill this out. To make sure we're getting good representation in the last 2 weeks. We learned a lot, but one of the things I think we learned from doing that, and especially with finding sponsors for that, is this endeavor of Other Side of Sales, which is the podcast, the survey, and a bunch of other stuff that's coming, is a lot more work, a lot more financial investment than either of us expected when we started. I think when we started, I was thinking like maybe an hour to a week, record some episodes, throw them up. And I made the classic non-marketer mistake of people will find us because we're awesome. That doesn't happen, apparently. So figuring out how to monetize this so we can balance covering our time and our expenses with fueling the mission that is our purpose in doing this, and giving back to the community, because we do want philanthropy and corporate giving to be a part of this mission. We think we absolutely have to put our money where our mouth is. Figuring out what that balance looks like, it has been literally a year in the making, and is still in progress.
And it's something that, as we get more feedback from what we've done, as we release the results of this to the world, I think we're going to learn a lot more about what worked, what didn't. I am absolutely thrilled by the support that we got from this endeavor, because, you know, we had serious lofty goals. We were like, we want 1,000 responses to this survey.
Oh, we thought we were going to get 3,000 to 5,000 people.
And we got 500, and really, like, when we've looked at all the other studies that have been done in our industry, 500 is a ton. And also know the demographics don't match the demographics of the United States, but they come much closer than I expected them to. And I think they're probably better than the sales industry as a whole, although that's speculation.
Well, we'll talk about in the survey results. I'm literally in the process of writing that up right now. So we have sections on this. We have data and analysis of that. But I think the thing that surprised me too, like we did come a lot closer on that than I expected. Yeah, which was very exciting.
And we also got really great feedback from a lot of people that took it and then would send us messages being like, oh my God, no one's asked me these questions. Thank you so much. You know, we also got some mocking feedback of like, ugh, why are you doing this?
Well, and we got people who were giving great feedback. Like, I think there were even a few people, we actually changed a couple questions once we had 50 within the first 100 responses, just slightly, because we realized that, like, for example, our phrasing around gender identity wasn't reflective of the community. And we didn't figure that out. We tried, but we got feedback from people that, hey, you need to add another option and change this phrasing. Immediately changed it. Yeah. So there's a lot learned there, but it's, and again, just because we're mentioning it, I want to make sure we do thank our sponsors, VanillaSoft, SalesLoft, and Bravado, who have been very patient and hugely supportive. And we do really appreciate them. And you'll be hearing a lot more from us on this stuff coming soon. But and I think the one thing we've learned from the Safe Sales Survey as well is there's going to be another one. We definitely have to do more here. There needs to be more study. There needs to be more analysis, but figuring out how to do that in a way that lets us both keep our rent and stuff going and not suck our lives dry would be great. So lots of stuff coming there. Not really stuff you as listeners care about, but again, transparency and honesty and accountability. These are things that we're trying to figure out. So I think the last thing that we kind of learned is, while it's great to have the ideas and the format and all these other things, it's also just as powerful to be flexible with the format, with the content, with every aspect of this, because our mission won't happen. You know, our mission of creating an inclusive sales culture where everyone can thrive is not going to happen if we're not staying connected to reality.
Absolutely.
And that hit us hard in early June when we're like, okay, how do we do content about hitting quota or mentorship when the cities that we live in are literally on fire? Yeah. No, that's not the world.
So much pain.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, what we've really realized is that it's more valuable for us to be flexible about what content and how we deliver it, based on what we feel like our community needs and wants. And so, you know, and kudos to Ashleigh, because this all happened when I was really out, putting together the Selling While Black panel discussion and webinar, and really, you know, pivoting the podcast so that it was super focused on Black sales professionals and telling those stories and having really hard conversations about what was going on in our country. And we got such amazing feedback from people about how valuable that was and how it made some people feel less alone, how it made other people feel more connected, about how it helped people learn. And that's really the whole point of why we do this. And
we actually got so much good feedback that initially we were going to do another one pretty quick. And we actually paused because we got such a good amount of feedback. We're like, this is bigger than a webinar. And so we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming. Don't want to get all into it at once. But like, for example, like I'll tell you this, like a bunch of you have reached out and asked, can you please release that podcast as a webinar? Or can you release the webinar as a podcast episode? So that is going to start happening. We are going to start doing webinars more frequently. We've actually got a whole Selling While series planned. So there's going to be, we've got several coming on a variety of topics. There will be another Selling While Black. And every time we do one of these things live, which we do encourage you to attend live, we will also release those as a midweek bonus episode every time they happen. So those will also be coming to your podcast catcher soon. But that means, like, for example, we will not be in this new year doing, for example, Kasey and I chatting and then an interview, and then Kasey and I chatting and then an interview. We will potentially do multiple weeks in a row on a certain topic so we can really dive into it, and then have an awesome sales pro on, or however we're gonna do whatever we think is the best way to accomplish the education, the exposure that is the mission, versus trying to slot things in. I know we pivoted early in this year. We're like, oh, we're going to do a whole month on a single topic. We tried that a couple times. Kind of worked, kind of didn't. So it's very much been a learning experience. And the one thing I think we agree on is the mission is rigid. The format isn't.
Yeah. And frankly, I think that what we realized is that being flexible about the format actually helps us stick to the mission a lot easier. And sometimes it doesn't, you know, and especially like in the past, we've had topics where we wanted to go deeper, but what winds up happening is it's like we cover part of it in one episode, then there's an interview in between, then we cover part of it later, and it doesn't have that kind of cohesive feel. And so we want the ability to like go deeper on certain topics. And that also means though that we would love feedback from all of you of what topics would be most valuable. What are the things you're struggling with that you're thinking about? What do you feel like isn't being covered? So that we can kind of work that into our strategy and work that into our approach.
Yeah. So that's a lot about all the things we've learned, what we're working on, some of the little quick previews of stuff to come. I think as we wrap this up, Kasey, I'm curious, what is or are some of your favorite memories from the first year?
Well, in general, I mean, we've had some of the most amazing conversations, and there are people who started out as people that we interviewed who are close friends. Sunanda Nair is a phenomenal example.
Yep.
Like people that I thought were interesting, sure, but there's something about really digging in and like learning about, you know, these unique perspectives, and or it's a bonding experience.
Yeah. It's remarkable how many cell phone numbers I have.
Yeah.
That, I mean, in full credit, this podcast and the connections that I've made doing it are a huge reason why I was able to start my own company in January.
Yeah.
You know, so many of the guests that we had on were so influential, were so willing to take calls, help, network, promote, refer. It was huge.
Yeah.
And I mean, just like, if you haven't listened to some of the early ones, like Sunanda is fantastic. She's great. John Seelig is hysterical in every way. Jamie Diglio is fantastic.
Yes.
I love Jamie. I got to reach out to her again. But like, even just thinking back to, I loved when we had Bernadette on. Yeah. And she just spun that episode back on us. Oh my God,
she was amazing. Yes.
You know, I mean, we've had great conversations. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed like talking about like wearing heels at work, because no one ever talks about that.
Yep.
But equally meaningful as those kind of surface stuff is, I'm going to look back on this first year. It's all going to be about those connections with the guests.
Yeah.
There's so many things there and so many people now that I think are going to be long-term friends.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And I'm going to go ahead one more step, because I think the thing that is really legitimately going to stand out to me the most is, and this is going to be something we're going to talk about later, that I will not get mushy here, too mushy, but I found such an incredible friend in you, Kasey, in doing this together. And just going through the experience of being privileged enough to support you as you've been recovering, and see how strong you are and how you fought back from all this stuff. And see, God damn it, now I got myself going.
Like you jinxed me. You said you weren't going to get mushy, and so now I am. I mean, and that's it. Like, this experience for us has been, I mean, and I don't think people realize this, Ashleigh and I have only met in person once.
For about 5 minutes.
Yeah, like literally, like, and it was like us like bullshitting in the ladies' room at a sales hacker conference. Like, this was not like a, you know, and the process of us going through all of this, of us screwing it up a bunch of times.
Yep. just a few.
Way. It's like it's a bonding experience in ways that you can't possibly understand. And the way you supported me when I had an experience that I can only describe as truly terrifying and truly traumatic. Like literally, I didn't understand the word triggered until I went through this experience. I'm just so grateful for you, and I'm so grateful for what we've built together.
Yeah.
And
we built a thing.
We built a thing, and the best part of it is us.
Yeah. And I mean, we love you guys for listening. We do. But not to be completely selfish.
But you know, look, I think it's one of those things that, and we've thought about this a lot, and especially Ashleigh, as you've gone out into business for yourself, we've talked about a bunch, like the line when you're an entrepreneur, the line between personal and professional is so blurred.
Yes.
And sometimes you think that, and there's downsides to it for sure, but sometimes you worry that you should feel worse about it than you actually do when you realize, like, no, it's the friendships that I've made through work stuff. That's me doing air quotes for anyone listening. That like legit were my ride or die, that were like saved me through this experience. And I could not have predicted that.
No, and I'll share the same thing, because it was watching you go through that experience. It reinforced a few different things, but same thing. It kind of got me over that mental hump of, oh, well, I should have friends outside of work.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I should do this. No, it's okay. I'm a workaholic. I love what I do. I am passionate about what I do. Of course, the people who I choose to hang around with, even if it's virtually, are going to share that passion.
Yes.
And screw what conventional wisdom says. So it has been a wild and crazy year. I'm very much looking forward to the next year, mostly because the next year will end in a 1 and not a 0, and I'm done with 2020. This part of it has been.
Yeah, this has been rough. But I also think, look, I think the thing that I'm also really excited about is we've learned so much over the last year, and we still have a lot to learn, but the learnings are like coming together in this way where I feel like we're figuring it out. And I feel like we're recognizing this pathway to being able to have a bigger impact on what we do, and also have the ridiculous amount of work that we've put into this
make an impact.
Which
is what we talk about monetization and stuff, but that's really where we're going. This is all about creating an impact on this profession and this industry that we do truly love with all our heart, and we know it's capable of being more than it is.
Yeah.
And excited to have the opportunity to try and achieve that, whatever that looks like. And it's probably going to change every 6 months.
Yeah. I feel like we really should have had, like, I don't know, champagne or martinis like ready to go for the end of this.
It would have been smart, wouldn't it? Except for the fact that it's 5:00 here. I can drink.
That's Saturday. I don't know.
Saturday. Good point. Day drinking. Or whatever. But, we'll kind of just to wrap this up. Thank you, listeners, for listening, for coming on this journey with us, for participating in whatever capacity you have been able to. I am excited and honored that you've come on this journey with me, Kasey, and I'm really excited to see what we're able to do in this next year, given everything we've learned this year.
Yeah, me too. I feel so grateful for you sending me that text message that was like, hey, random idea, want to start a podcast, ?
Hooray, random road trip ideas.
Yeah. And really grateful that, like, I don't know, we just dove in head first and messed up a bunch of things, figured it out, and I think we get better every single week.
Yeah, I do too. I want to do one last thing before we go, because it's just occurred to me, because this is not just us that's doing this. So I want to thank Michael, who is my so supportive, long-suffering podcast editor for this. So he's the one that makes us all sound normal, and tells us when.
Let's not oversell it there.
Yeah, good point. He makes us sound significantly more normal than we do when we record these raw. I want to thank several people on the A Better Jones, actually the entire A Better Jones team, because they've all helped out with us in some form. So that's Nikki, Allie P, and Allison. I'm blanking her last name.
Delphium.
Thank you.
Allison
Delphium. You have too many Allisons on your team. And as someone named Ashleigh, I really should not be complaining about that. Again, the people who've been really supportive, the sponsors for the State of Sales survey.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, who else have we leaned on this year?
Trish Bertuzzi.
Oh God, Trish Bertuzzi, James Buckley.
Yep.
Morgan Ingram, John Barrows has been super helpful. I'm gonna call
absolutely anybody that is, every single guest that has come on, every single person that has recommended a guest, just absolutely everyone. And we want this to feel like a community, not a podcast. And so we really appreciate every time somebody reaches out and talks with us, and we want more of that. We want more of your ideas. And of course, every single person that took the State of Sales survey, we are super grateful to.
Awesome. Well, Kasey, we've made it one more year. What do you think about doing another one?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. And we will see you next week, hear you for year 2 of Other Side of Sales.
Yeah.